Chapter 95. Volus. Larry? Nick asked, dumbfounded. The human's familiarity with the creature helped my heart settle a little, but not by much. Near and Earl were also taken aback, but they didn't seem to recognize the abomination. I knew what stood before us, though, the epitome of misguided mortal ambition, and a testament to the depravity that lurks within us all. My master had allowed me the use of his library whenever I finished my daily duties earlier than expected. Of the vast number of books contained within, only one tome dared to depict the terrible nature of a lich. Even that tome only spoke in allegory and metaphor, so as to protect its reader from the true horrors involved. Surprised to see me? Lord Visimiro chuckled. Yolk recommended me to High Chief Ulermak. Well, that doesn't surprise me, Nick sighed. You agreed, though? Of course. I possess a great deal of knowledge and experience that would benefit a great many. The lich nodded somberly. High Chief Ulermak sent a very respectful delegation who made certain to point this out to me. They effectively guilted me into it. A mortal that wishes to become a lich must subject several victims to extensive tortures and extract specific humors from what little blood remains. The process of this extraction is always fatal, releasing each of the poor victims from their mangled mortal shell. The lich then uses these humors to craft a potion that allows them to escape the notice of the higher ones while they take the next step toward their own damnation. The tome that I read did not specify the number of victims required, but it implied that it was over 100. It also implied that the next step in the process requires twice that number of victims, all of whom had to be children or infants. Anything capable of such terrible acts would be crushed under the weight of their guilt, were they able to feel even a smidge of empathy. So how can this thing be guilted into something? Could this creature be something other than a lich? What about the kobolds? Nick asked. They've achieved a semblance of self-sufficiency. Simith, the kobold you're familiar with, has a rather surprising knack for leadership. With some clear and concise instructions, they should be able to thrive without me for quite some time, the lich explained, then laughed. I can only hope that my instructions were clear and concise enough. Now please take your seats. Nick nodded and unceremoniously plopped himself into one of the chairs. The orcs and I shared a glance and reluctantly followed suit. Our teacher was likely an abomination, but there was little I could do about it. Attacking it would spell my doom, regardless of whether or not I was successful in destroying it, which was quite unlikely. Plus, what if it wasn't actually a lich? Thank you for your prompt attendance, it said with a nod. My name is Larry Visimiro, Lord of the Fallen and King of the Kobolds. With the pronouncement of his title, several facts came together within my mind. Visimiro, as in House Visimiro, the noble house founded by the great Magus Imlor Visimiro the Grand, the most famous gnome to ever live. Larry Visimiro, his son, was one of the greatest healers to ever grace the mortal realm. But it can't be the same Larry Visimiro. A lich can live in perpetuity, but how could someone with such legendary kindness and compassion become such a monstrosity? And how could it dare to show its face here in such a state? Is it counting upon our own kindness and ignorance to avoid punishment for its misdeeds? Or was the great Larry Visimiro cursed somehow, and simply resembles a lich? I'm afraid that due to the customs of the unified chiefdoms you must refer to me as Lord Visimiro, it explained. Of course, I won't do anything if you call me something else, but... The lich trailed off and looked pointedly at the muscular elf sitting behind us. She smiled at our glances with a hint of maliciousness. I noticed the emblem of the Pumos trade union pinned to her shirt. A trade union enforcer? Despite her chosen trade, I felt a sort of kinship with her. Like me, she was an elf surrounded by orcs and worked in a male-dominated field. I wondered if she had felt as much pressure from them during her career as I had in my own. Probably. But whilst I must utilize passive aggression and my wits, she probably just punches anyone that gets too mouthy. Must be cathartic. In this class, I will be teaching you everything that I know about the art of healing, Lord Visimiro explained. However, before we begin our lesson, I feel that my current state of being needs to be addressed. I am a lich. My heart pounded at the confirmation. An obscenity stood before us, intending to teach us the sacrosanct art of healing? What in the hells was happening here? Has the High Chief lost his mind? The color drained from Nir's face, but Earl cautiously raised his hand. Yes? Lord Visimiro asked. Well, Lord, Earl stammered. What's a lich? I appreciate the question. It takes courage to reveal one's ignorance and attempt to correct it. It paused for a moment, as if to gather its words. A lich is the atrocious result of an utterly disgraceful attempt to violate the natural order of life and achieve immortality. He practically spat the words, and the venom in his tone shocked me. Where was this anger coming from? Is he ashamed of what he has done? Near and I shared a quick expression of confusion with each other, but Nick noticed. Lord Visamiro didn't choose to become a lich, Nick explained. It was forced upon him by— Nick, though speaking out of turn, is correct, our teacher interrupted. The story of how I was turned into what I am is a matter for another time, though. We have precious little time together and plenty to lear. I raised my hand, cutting him off. His attention turned to me, and I stared into the void that his eyes should rest in. Yes? He asked. I'm sorry, Lord Visamiro, but I have to know, I said, gathering my courage. You seem to acknowledge that your existence is an affront to all that is good and right, but— well, why haven't you— I trailed off, too afraid to finish the question. Silence filled the classroom as my classmates stared at me in shock. The only one who had seemed to expect the question was the lich. Tried to end my existence? Lord Visamiro finished my question, then sighed. I hardly see how that's any of your business, but if you must know, I have. Unfortunately, a lich cannot kill itself. I can do nothing that may harm my phylacteries, not even reveal their locations, and damaging my own physical form will only result in my own revival. But— That's quite enough, the elf behind me angrily interrupted. Lord Visamiro, please start your lesson. The lich stared at me for a moment, its skull utterly devoid of expression, then played with some papers at its desk. It then stood and began to lecture us on the art of healing. I received some rather unkind glances from my classmates that caused me to blush, but before long, they were enraptured by the lesson. I tried to pay attention as Lord Visamiro explained the basic concepts of healing spells, but my thoughts were racing. How could one be forced into lichdom? Even so, why would the High Chief choose them to teach something so sacrosanct? Finally, why am I the only one who seems to be upset by this development? Perhaps I had taken after my master too much. For almost a decade now, I'd served as the butler of Lord Alvintus Maxim, patriarch of the Maxim clan. I'd often been told that his views on right and wrong were much too black and white, but they had always made sense to me. His views on morality were the entire reason I was able to attend this school in the first place. Ever since I revealed my desire to learn magic to him as a young girl, he'd been lamenting how unfair it is to keep me as his butler. He had even queried several mages over the years, hoping to find me a sufficient tutor. They were all either too busy or too greedy, though. When High Chief Ulermak had requested that Lord Maxim invest in this school, my master agreed on the condition that I be accepted. It was a very kind gesture, one which I am utterly unworthy of, but it came with a catch. The Maxim clan is no longer in a position in which to be charitable. Once I achieve competency in magic, I'll return to my master and act as his head of security and advisor of the arcane until my retirement. It's an arrangement that I'm more than happy with, of course, but Lord Maxim still lamented its necessity. The previous head of security had fled her post to elope with Lord Maxim's youngest daughter. A lesser Mer would have had bounty hunters on her tail for her audacity, but he simply wished the young couple well and chose me to fill the position. Things had lined up almost perfectly, in fact. I wondered what my master would do in my position and decided to write him and ask. He will be able to judge the situation better than I ever could. If I'm right to feel this way, he'll explain what I should do about it. If I'm in the wrong, he'll explain why in such a way that will alleviate my ill feelings. Satisfied with my decision, I turned my attention back to the lich and noticed that he was staring at me. Young elf, I realize that you must have a lot on your mind, but it will be difficult to catch up if you lose focus, Lord Visamiro said. Young? I stuttered, dumbfounded. The lich tilted its head at me, seemingly confused, then seemed to have a revelation. My apologies. You must be older than I take you for and unused to being called young, he chuckled. In my defense, though, you are much, much younger than I am. How old are you? ERL asked. Come now, that's hardly relevant to the lesson at hand. Oh yeah, sorry, my lord, I was just curious. Understandable. Truth be told, I am unsure. I have spent quite a long time underground, you see. In dungeons, it is difficult to keep track of whether it is day or night, so I quickly lost track of such things. The calendar has changed as well, so I would have to find a historian to help me figure it out. Frankly, it isn't worth the effort. Suffice it to say that I'm more than a lifetime older than all of you put together. So you'd be Bones anyway? Everyone in the class gave Earl an exasperated expression. Oh, sorry, my lord, Earl said, rubbing his neck. Lord Visamiro gave Earl a pointed look, then continued his lesson. He explained that the efficacy of healing depends greatly upon the caster's knowledge of anatomy and physiology. Then, for Earl's benefit, he explained what anatomy and physiology meant. Like other forms of magic, if one knows exactly what the spell should be doing, the spell will do it better, he said. By better, I mean both faster and more thoroughly. Let's have an example. Who can tell me what a liver does? I reluctantly raised my hand. Yes? The liver balances one's humors, does it not? I asked. That is correct. The Lich nodded happily as Nick raised his hand. Oh, we have another answer. Go ahead, Nick. Balancing the humors is a fair summary, but I have learned several of its specific functions, if you're interested, Nick said, a little shyness seeping into his voice. Of course, go ahead. Nick then explained that one's liver processes all of the blood that leaves one's digestive system. It does several things during its processing, such as regulate amino acids, convert sugar into a form that's easier to store, removing bacteria from the blood, converting ammonia to urea, as well as produce proteins, cholesterol, and bile. Lord Visamiro, Nier, and I were absolutely enraptured by his explanations. RRL was predictably confused. Lord Visamiro asked Nick to explain what each of these byproducts were, and the human did his best to do so. He noted that the class in which he learned this information was considered rudimentary by his society's standards, but I had already retrieved my journal and began taking meticulous notes. It occurred to me that one likely had to perform some rather ethically questionable research to learn information like this, but I decided to let it be. It was possible that my reaction toward Lord Visamiro had already made a fool of me, and it's best to only do that once a day if one can help it. Very good, Nick. Lord Visamiro nodded thoughtfully. Thank you for your insight. Now for the example question. If your patient was stabbed in the liver, whose healing would be the most effective? The humans or the elves? Earl raised his hand before everyone else, and the Lich gestured to him. Well, Volus had a good answer, but I think Nick's beat hers, he said. Plus, he's already a pretty powerful mage. His healing's probably top-notch. Good! Lord Visamiro's skull seemed to smile. You're correct in both regards, actually. Having an intricate knowledge regarding the functions of the body will save you from having to cast your healing spells multiple times. But if you have a large reserve of magic, you'll be able to counteract your ignorance. Having both will allow you to heal more people and cast more intricate healing spells. Nick raised his hand. Yes, Nick? Do you know anything about being able to continuously cast Minor Heal, Lord Visamiro? Continuously cast, as opposed to casting multiple times in quick succession. Yes. I've never heard of such a thing. The Lich tilted its skull. Care to elaborate? I don't think I can, Nick said, rubbing his neck. Not without you, Mr. Alta. Lord Visamiro opened his jaw to reply, but the bell rang before he could say anything. Ah, well, perhaps we should have an after-school meeting then, he laughed. Can I have a volunteer retrieve Mr. Alta, please? I quickly raised my hand, hoping to be able to attend this meeting. Nick seemed to have quite a lot of knowledge, and I couldn't help but want every last bit of it. Thank you for volunteering, Lord Visamiro nodded at me. As for the rest of you, I will see you tomorrow. You're dismissed! Ignoring the curious looks from Earl and Nier, I gathered my things and rushed to Mr. Alta's classroom. I found him at his desk, writing something on a long scroll of paper. Oh, yes? He asked. How can I help you? Hello, Mr. Alta. Apologies for the interruption. Lord Visamiro and Nick are having a meeting that requires your attendance, sir, I explained. It's about healing magic. I see. Okay, lead the way. Mr. Alta stood from his desk and followed me out of the classroom. His gait was slower than mine, and I recognized the signs of a serious spinal injury. My younger brother had suffered such a fate, though his injury didn't heal quite as well as Mr. Alta's had. I tempered my curiosity, though. Such an injury is oftentimes a sore subject, and harming my relationship with a teacher over something I didn't need to know was a decidedly bad idea. I kept my mouth shut until we reached Lord Visimiro's classroom. As we entered, I noticed that the bodyguard had also left. "Lord Visimiro," Mr. Alta said with a small bow, "how can I help you?" "Well, Nick brought up a rather interesting topic of conversation and insisted that you be present before it is discussed any further," the Lich replied. "I hope you don't mind." Perish the thought. What, may I ask, is this regarding? The continuous casting of healing spells. I suspected as much, Mr. Alta chuckled. We had decided to keep it a secret while some researchers looked further into the matter, but they're well on their way by now. Whilst it likely wouldn't be wise to declare that Nick is the one that made the discovery, there's no longer any need to keep it fully under wraps. I carefully pulled out my journal to take notes, doing my best not to disturb the meeting. Mr. Alta noticed and chuckled, but Lord Visimiro and Nick were focused on the topic at hand. Nick explained how he learned Minor Heal while trying to save a comrade during a bandit attack. However, he had held the spell instead of casting it multiple times and had used all of his magic reserve, passing out as a result. "I have never heard of such an occurrence," Lord Visimiro said. "Neither a case of someone stumbling into healing magic, nor someone extending their cast of said magic. Were you able to save your friend?" The concern in the question caught me off guard. A being as old as Lord Visimiro worrying about someone he didn't know in the face of knowledge that he had yet to obtain about a subject that was undeniably his passion? It would seem that the legends regarding his demeanor were true. I made a mental note to include this in my correspondence with my master. "He made it," Nick said. "It was pretty close, though. Abdominal wounds can be rather serious. I'm glad your friend survived." Lord Visimiro nodded. The discussion returned to the subject at hand. Lord Visimiro admitted that he was intrigued and decided that at least part of the class should be spent exploring the possibilities of continuous casting. Mr. Alta made a joke about how nonchalant he was being, but Lord Visimiro countered by pointing out that he already knew several spells that had apparently been lost to time. "To me, this happens to be yet another task on a quite long list," the Lich chuckled. "I'll ponder on how we shall approach this while you take your rest." With that, the meeting ended, and we went our separate ways. I rushed across the street to the inn, barely remembering to have dinner. After scarfing my food, I rushed to my room and wrote a letter to my master, hoping for guidance. Is someone that has been forced into being an abomination free of the stain regarding their creation? Should I just ignore the fact that Lord Visimiro is a lich? If not, what can I do about it? Lord Maxim will know. Chapter 96. Lord Samith. "Lord, we's got peoples in the dungeon," Marka said. "Peoples?" I asked. "Whose peoples?" "They's got weapons, maybe adventurers." "Oh, shitty people. Are they my friends?" I felt excited. It had been a long time since I seen my shitty friends, even longer than I'd seen the Lord. Being the leader is hard, and presents from my friends would maybe help, or even just seeing them again. "Don't think so." Marka shook her head. "They's all elves." "Oh," I sighed. "So I's gotta sit in the chair?" "Maybe, could be diplomacies." "Diplomats," I corrected. "Diplomacies is what negotiations is." Marka gave me a look and muttered something under her breath. She very good at numbers, but not so good at words. Not as good as me, for sure. She also a little mad about my job as leader, and always says her dad should be the leader. Not in a mean way, but close. The Lord was asked to teach peoples about magics, and had put me in charge of everyone while he gone. The other kobolds had given me a title to match my new job, Lord, short for Little Lord. Some of the Bakeabolds had made some pretty mean jokes about that, but they stopped joking when I made them gather fertilizer for our crops. It made me feel good that my title sounded like the Lord's, but now everybody is always asking me about stuff. I didn't know that I knew stuff, and sometimes I don't know stuff and have to guess. It makes my heart beat fast and I don't like it. But it's what the Lord said, so I gotta do it. For the Lord. "All right, I'll seize them in the chair room," I said. "Oh, you wants us to talk with them?" Marka's eyes widened. "What you mean? You hasn't talked to them yet?" "No, we's just been watching. Thought you might want to get rid of them. Right now they's looking at the rooms by the entrance." "The hidden ones?" Not hidden no more. We don't know how to close them back up. It's the same button that opens the doors, I protested. Oh, well, too late's for that now. The elves are already snooping through our stuff. Marka shrugged, then froze. You don't think they're gonna take anything, do you? Well, if they do, we can just ask them to give it back, I said. Might just let 'em keeps it, actually. Teach you to lock up your stuff. That's not FAI. I cut her off by waving my hand impatiently. I's joking. Get the guards, I'm gonna sit on my seat, I said. Samial can talk good. Haves him talk with the adventurers and bring them to the chair room. Remember, we want peace and trade. For the Lord. For the Lord? Marka said excitedly and scurried off. Marka's father, Tomasz, was supposed to be my advisor, but claimed that he was too old to keep up anymore. He stuck me with his daughter, maybe hoping that we like each other and fertilize some eggs together. That not gonna happen, though. The Lord warned me not to fertilize with those who give me advice. Fertilizing is kind of a sad thought for me, actually. Yamuna, the kobold I liked a lot, died fighting the vampires. She was older than me, but very nice and pretty. We made each other laugh a lot. I misses her, and it feels bad to think about fertilizing with someone else so soon. I walked into the chair room and 6 huge bakeabolds holding spears snapped their feet together. I waved to let them stand normal and noticed that they were breathing hard. They must have ran to get here from wherever they were. Must have been pretty far because bakeabolds can run really, really fast. Bakeabolds are like kobolds, but really big and strong. The Lord says they're a genetic mutation made by the mages that used kobolds as soldiers during wars. They comes from normal kobold eggs, but they can't fertilize eggs. Their normal brothers and sister can, though, and there's a chance that them's little ones could be bakeabolds. In the kobold villages, they're usually made to be the leader. Village leaders have to fight a lot, and bakeabolds are very good at fighting. Our bakeabolds hunt monsters and guard our home. They seems to like it more. I sat in my little chair in front of the Lord's big, fancy chair. Sitting in the Lord's chair felt wrong, so Tomasz had come up with this instead. He said there was symbolism, too. Me being in a small chair with a big chair behind me symbolized that there was a greater power behind my words and actions. That old kobold loves stuff like that. Tomasz is probably the smartest kobold. I thought maybe he should be leader, but the Lord and Tomasz both said no. It had to be someone youthful, or the bakeabolds and younger kobolds wouldn't listen like they should. So Tomasz taught me as much as he could and put Marka in charge of teaching me more stuff. She was mad about it, but since she's good at numbers, she taught me that 8 doesn't mean 8. Lord, Gar, one of the bakeabolds, whispered. What we doing here? There's some shitty peoples coming who might want to trade, I replied. Don't worry, I'll do the talking. You just stand there and look big. No growly faces. Don't want to be too scary. The bakeabolds nodded and shifted their stances. We waited for a bit. Then Samial walked into the chair room. He was followed by 6 elves, wearing armor and holding a bunch of different weapons. Nervously, he approached me and kissed the ground at my feet. Lord Samith, I bring you guests, he said. Many apologizes. In all the excitements, I didn't ask for their names. That's okay, I said. We can all introduce ourselves. Hello, adventurers. I am Samith, the lord of these kobolds and bakobolds. And you? I am Haran, the tallest elf said. I am accompanied by Yolin, Talu, Plethin, Narasth, and Dima. We come from the hamlet of Vargova, within the kingdom of Kivinor, 10 days' journey to the south. That's a long ways. Why you come so far? The elves looked at each other nervously, and Haran turned back to me. A rather important trade caravan went missing, and we were contracted to find out what happened to it. We found its remains not far from here, but found no bodies or clues as to what happened to it. Then a passing merchant pointed us toward this dungeon. No bodies? Gar asked. Think it was the vampires? June, another bakobold guard, nudged him. The elves looked at my guards with surprise. Maybe they didn't know they could talk. It maybe was the vampires, I nodded wisely. Other adventurers from the city killed them and saved our lord, though. Your lord? Is he here? No, he's teaching people magic in the Orklands. Don't know how long he's going to be gone, but he put me in charge. Did you want to trade? Trade? Haran asked, looking at me like I grew a new head. Yeah, we got plenty of foods, baskets, clothes, and other stuff. The caravan from the city won't get here until tomorrow, so you'll get first pick of the best stuff we got. Will you excuse us for a moment? I feel this warrants some discussion. Yeah, I said with a smile. Discuss is all you needs. The elves walked over to the entrance of the chair room and leaned toward each other. Then they started talking quieter, but I could still hear them. The Lord always said we's got really good hearings. I don't understand, there were vampires in this dungeon. It's not that hard to understand, Plethin, Haran whispered with a sigh. Vampires killed the caravan. Another group of adventurers beat us to the retribution. But where do these kobolds come in? Probably lived here before the vampires, Dima said. Does it matter? They're here now. Do we do something? Probably not. Bakeobolds are rare, but the price you get for their parts often isn't worth the fight they put up, Talu whispered. And there's fucking 4 of them in this room alone. I don't want to know how many more of them are lurking in these corridors. The difficulty of the fight is not the concern, Haran shook his head. The issue is that they're offering trade, and if I understand correctly, they have been trading with the city of Calcuti. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not entirely familiar with Calcuti's laws, but I'm certain that interfering with trade is illegal. We're not outlaws. I, for one, want to see what they've got, Dima said. Clothes for whom, kobolds? But they're all naked? We need to reprovision anyway. Might as well see what they have. Kobolds are meat eaters, but there were crops in front of the dungeon. Maybe they have some veg jerky. You think they'll take coin? Even if they don't, we have Yargan pelts. Yargans aren't native to these lands, so their pelts are pretty rare. We'll be able to get all the food we need for them. We do takes coins, I interrupted. Samial, go get Tomash. The elves looked at me like I'd grown head number 3. Then I remembered that dropping eaves is rude. Before I could apologize, though, Heron spoke up. Our apologies, Lilord. We were not aware of how keen kobold hearing is, he said, bowing. As you likely heard, we have decided to take you up on your offer of trade. Oh, okay, I replied. Tomash will check your coins and then we'll go to the storeroom. We got lots of foods that you'll probably like, even fruits and veggies. We don't really eat those much, but the shitty folk loves them. Lilord, I find myself terribly curious about something, the elf called Talu said. May I ask a question? I don't have control of your mouth, I laughed. Ask. If I don't likes the question, I don't have to answer. Ah, right. What do you trade with the city for? To make friends and improves the quality of life. Lots of kobold clans are friends with the unshitty folk, but most kobold clans are at war with shitty folk. The Lord doesn't want us to be at war with the shitty folk, I answered with a slow nod. We trade because shitty folk like to trade, and we get cool stuff sometimes. Well, Millilord, that's actually what I was asking. Talu rubbed his neck. What do they usually provide in return for your trade? Oh, well, we gets weapons, medicines, books, and fat meats, I laughed. The fat meats are our favorite, 'cause those animals don't grow good in dungeons and they don't wander around in the wilds or wastes. The shitty has the fattest fat meats. Come to think of it, these bakeobolds have spears that look more like glaives, the Plethin elf said. Yeah, we traded them for a batch of bogberries. I smiled as Tomash entered the chair room. Lilord, Tomash bowed. You summoned me? Yes, these elves want to trade and they got coins, but not from around here. Can you see if their coins are like the shitty folks' coins? Of course, he turned to the elves. May I see these coins? Haran reached into his shirt, pulled out a coin and handed it over. Tomash sniffed it, tried to bend it, then bit it. He grunted and gave it back to the elf, then turned to me and bowed again. It's good currency, Lilord. I don't recognize it, though, so its presence in our coffers will likely raise some eyebrows with the people of the city, but they will likely take it in trade. Good, I said. Let's go to the storeroom so they can have a look and pick out what they want to trade for. I got off my seat and gestured for them to follow me. Tomash walked next to me as both Gar and Jaun followed behind the elves. I thought about telling them to back off, but decided that having guards wouldn't be a bad idea. What if this is a trap? Plethin asked. Please give us a little more credit than that, Tomash answered with a chuckle. Guiding you into a trap instead of fighting you in the chair room would be quite stupid. Oh, sorry. We wouldn't traps you, I added. Like Tomash said, if we wanted to fight you, we would haves in the chair room. We had a much better tacky tickle advantage in there. We entered the storage room, and some of the elves gasped. The room had a bunch of really tall shelves, and those shelves were almost full of the stuff we had planned to trade with the shitty caravan. Most of the elves were excited, but the one named Nrast looked bored. She saw me see her and seemed to make a decision. "Lord, may I take a look around the dungeon?" she asked. "Trade isn't of interest to me, but I would love to know more about this place and about your civilization." "Sure," I shrugged. "But if kobolds say not to go into a place or to ask someone else your questions, please do what they says. Lots of us are really nice, but we still got some biters." "Understood," she nodded with a big grin. "Thank you, Lord." She left the room as the bakeabolds began grabbing things off the shelf for us. The elves that stayed were shocked at all the stuff we had gotten. Tomasz had to explain several of the monster materials to them, and even some of the foods. "I guess shitties really do have different stuffs," I said. "Yes, Lord," Tomasz nodded. "That's why trade is so vital for cities. One city may have a surplus of good quality construction stone, and another may have a surplus of medicines. Both have more than they could ever hope use, but that won't help them if they ever find themselves lacking in the other area. So they must cooperate through trade or fight. Trade obviously is the better option." "I know," I said, annoyed. "I's not dumb." "Apologies, Lord. I did not mean to imply—" "It's fine. I know that you're so smart that it just leaks out sometimes." I sighed as the elves picked out some stuff that they wanted. Tomasz really should have been the Lord. He even talks like the Lord, but the Lord said that's not a good thing, that people like their leaders to talk like them. "Okay, this will fill us up on food and give us a few items to give as gifts back home," Haran said. "How much?" Tomasz and the elves haggled, another thing I didn't have any sort of talent for. They went back and forth, the elves insulting the quality of the goods and Tomasz insulting the quality of their coins. Me, Gar, and June shared a look, and I shrugged at their concerned faces. Finally, they came to an agreement and shook hands, laughing. "I didn't expect such a hard bargain," Heron grinned. "A lively haggle is the best part of the experience of shopping, no?" Tomasz asked with a sly smile. "Indeed. We'll be sure to let other adventurers know about the trading kobolds of—" He paused thoughtfully. "What is this place called?" "I believe the people of the city are currently calling our humble abode the realm of the healing lich. We find that to be a bit of a mouthful, though, so we simply refer to it as the Lord's Dungeon." "The realm of the healing lich?" The elves shared a very concerned expression. "Our Lord is what the shitty folk calls a lich," I nodded wisely. "He's very good at healing, so they calls him the healing lich." I've never heard of a lich who uses healing spells," Haran said. "How could a healer become a lich?" "Dunno," I shrugged. "Maybe if you visit again when he's here, he'll tell you." "Do people come to him for healing?" Plethin asked. "Nope," I laughed. "I think it's because shitty people are scared of bones, and the Lord doesn't wear his skin." "Pardon me, Lord, but I believe that people are more afraid of liches than they are of bones," Tomasz chuckled. "Quite understandably so. However, the Lord is a special case. He's quite kind and wise. People would do well to seek his advice and aid." "Maybe why the orc school hired him as a teacher." "I see. Well, we've learned quite a bit about this place and we'll recommend it to other adventurers," Haran said. "We shall be on our—" "Wait, where's Nrast?" As he said her name, she entered the storage room with a kobold named Hinthry. Both of them were out of breath and very excited. "I'm right here," she grinned. "And I've made an amazing discovery." "She really did," Hinthry added. "Lord, this is Biggs. Really, really Biggs." "Biggs?" I asked. "Yes, Lord," Nrast replied. I was asking Hinthry here about the mushrooms she grows when I leaned against one of the walls. And it opened. Hinthry hopped up and down. It opened into a tunnel. A secret tunnel. "We followed it, and it leads to an abandoned manor," Nrast continued with a grin. "I think the manor is in the city that you trade with." "How is that possible?" I asked Tomasz. "Isn't the city pretty far?" "It's a few hours at a slow pace, but that's mostly because the road has to go around a cliff," Tomasz shrugged. "A direct tunnel would be much faster." "Lord, we can open a store!" Hinthry exclaimed. "We don't have to do the caravans no mores." Really? I asked, glancing back at Tomasz. Oh, I'm certain it will be more complicated than that, he laughed. But we might as well explore the option. I'm certain the Lord would approve. Before he left to be a teacher, the Lord told me that he wanted us to live in peace with the shitty folk. He said that I should try my best to make sure the kobolds and the shitty folk made friends. The shitty caravan doesn't really like stopping at our dungeon, but if kobolds had a store... Okay, I said with a determined nod. Let's try to make a shitty store!